We always start with the question, how do I coach? Our coaching model, our business development model is called CIGAR. And then the R is as simple as a review. If we're going to do something, it's up to us whether we do it or not. Think about barriers, think about what's missing. If you're a good coach, you can help anybody. What do we need to do more of? What do we need to do less of? Can it get more sophisticated? Of course, but let's start here. Hello again, welcome back. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. Leadership coaching is a widely misunderstood topic. When leaders tell us that they don't coach their people in any kind of really regular or meaningful or intentional or structured way, and then we ask them why not, they often list a few reasons that are born entirely out of misconceptions, misunderstandings, and all of that stuff. So to make sure that we, that's me and you, we're all on the same page straight out of the gate, here's what coaching definitely isn't. It isn't consulting or mentoring or therapy, far from it. It isn't imposing your own values or beliefs on others and having them think the same way that you do. It isn't too time consuming for a super busy and important leader like you. It isn't that either. It isn't only to be used for poor performance, not at all. It isn't solely to be conducted by qualified experts. Look, anyone can learn to coach, and yes, that 100% includes you. And it certainly isn't telling your people what to do, even if you're really lovely at it. You do it with a warm cup of cocoa and a comfy pair of slippers. What it is a super critical, crucial development tool that demands a place in every leader's toolbox. Look, if you aren't coaching your people, then I'm afraid you're not really a leader in our eyes. There, I've said it. If you're not coaching your people, you're not a true leader. Now, here's the good news. That's exactly why we put together this episode, to help you figure out how to coach your people and finally stop managing and start leading. Welcome to Stop Managing and Start Leading, the podcast for leaders who need to stop managing and for managers who want to start leading. I'm your host, Antonio Garrido. I'm the founder and president of My Daily Leadership. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a business founder, and I'm a leader just like you. I'm a 3-time author. I have led businesses from ground level startups, tiny, all the way to Fortune 60s with billions in revenue and thousands of employees. What if I told you that the secret to exceptional leadership is easier and closer than you think? Every leader and every manager has the potential to become exceptional, the kind of leader that their people, themselves, and their business deserves. And you are no exception. You just simply need to discover the mindsets, tools, competencies, and habits to unlock that potential. And that's where we come in. So if you haven't already, let me introduce you to our subscribe button. So subscribe to the My Daily Leadership YouTube channel today for lots of actionable insights and practical tools and our podcast episodes that drop every single week. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, do the same, but with a follow button. Both will help you to level up your leadership, so do it now. Story time. The most inspirational boss I ever had was such a wonderful coach, not just to me, but to everyone, of course. Now, I had assumed that he was so good at it that he must have been on some very grand coaching program over years, Harvard or Princeton or other such fonts and seats of learning and wisdom. And when I asked him how he knew so much about coaching and how he was so great at it and how might I also one day perhaps learn the skills that he had, he asked me this question. And I'm going to ask it to you now and have you think about it. He said, look, just think of the best coach that you ever knew. So you do that now. Best coach you ever knew. Hopefully you've got someone in mind. Great. So obviously I said to him that he was the best coach I'd ever known. And he said, quite surprisingly, he said, no, I'm not even close. Think again, he said. Well, I thought, and I drew a blank, and he said, your mum. Your mum was the best coach you ever knew. She helped you learn how to walk and to talk and to read and to write and how to use a fork, how to tie your shoelaces, everything. And she did a pretty good job of it too, he said, because I've seen you eat. He went on to explain that whoever brought you up and loved you for who you were and cared about you and your development, and not only that, but your development was more important than their discomfort, that is a coach. So think about that for a second, where your development was more important than their discomfort. And of course, as ever, he was right, because he was right with everything. That means, of course, that you're already a great coach. It's kind of stamped on your DNA. You, like me, you just needed some help. You just needed some help to know how to coach and to kind of draw it out of you and show you how it's done. Well, that's what we're going to show you today. That's what we're hoping to show you today, at any rate. So let's dive in to another leadership model and principle that I learned years ago. Now, if you typically join us on YouTube, you'll know that what we do here is we always introduce you to at least one or two critical leadership models by drawing them out. Because we're sort of visual learners here at My Daily Leadership, we're VLs. Now, if you're listening on a podcast platform, because maybe you're much more of an auditory learner, what we call ALs, well, that's great too. But if you actually want to see the content that we're about to talk about drawn out in real time, then switch over to YouTube now or later. But the models that we draw in today's episode and all of our episodes are also going to be available eventually to download online at www.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. Okay, so let's waste no more time and let's jump right in. We always start with a question, as usual, and hope to answer it as we go along. Today's question is, how do I coach? Okay, well, there are lots and lots and lots of coaching models. And they're all pretty good. You kind of find the one that grooves with you, and that's the one that you use. What I want to show you today, though, and however, is kind of the basis of the model that we have developed, that we use. Here's the beauty of our model. That our model is not only a model of how to coach somebody, although of course it is, because that's what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes. It's also a model to help you grow your business, your organization. So as I go through it, hopefully both things will make perfect sense. Now, for those that are listening, what I have here are five interconnected kind of boxes that when it's our real model that you actually see it one day perhaps, it's kind of represented as a jigsaw. I don't have the skill to draw a jigsaw, so I've just drawn 5 interconnected boxes. I hope you can see that if you're watching on YouTube, and I hope that makes sense. I did it in advance to save us a little time, and now I've been talking about it for the last 5 minutes. I could have just drawn it out, but anyway, hey, there you are. So here's what I'd like you to think of first of all. The model is just called CIGAR. All right, so let's put our CIGAR in each box. So C in the first one, I in the second one, G in the third, A in the fourth, R in the fifth. So CIGAR, that's our model. Our coaching model, our business development model is called CIGAR. Okay, so if you hadn't already figured out, this is an acronym. Okay, so what does CIGAR stand for, and then how do we apply it, how do we use it, and all of that good stuff. So let's kind of just figure out what the C stands for. Let's figure out what the I stands for, what the G stands for. I'm just drawing some lines so that we can actually complete the model. I'm hoping that's making some kind of sense. Anyway, The CIGAR, the C stands for current state. Okay, so the C stands for current state. Where are we now? And obviously I'm going to put more into each of these boxes as we go along, but just think about where are we now? Now, if we're going to be coaching somebody, it's like, where are they now in terms of their beliefs and values and skills or whatever? So where are we now? What's our current state? Where are we starting from, right? That's easy peasy. You know where you are now. So where's our current state? Okay, cool. That begs the question, well, where do we want to be? So what's our ideal state? So the I stands for ideal state. So where are we starting from? Where do we want to get to? Fairly obvious. Where's our current state? Where's our ideal state? The G stands for the gaps. It could be gap or it could be gaps. In other words, let's really define what that gap looks like. And we can do that in various ways, and I'll show you in a few minutes, but what we've covered so far is where are we now? Where do we want to be? And can we understand that gap? Let's try and understand that gap. If we know where we are, we know where we want to be, and we understand the gap, well, then it doesn't take a genius to actually figure out what the action plan is. So A is the action plan. What are the actions that we're going to take, do? What are the things that we're going to do to deal with that gap? Perfect. That's real easy peasy. So where are we now? Where do we want to be? Let's understand the gap. What's the plan to close that gap? Great. And then the R is as simple as a review. So if you think about a coaching session could start, where are we now? Where do we want to be? Let's understand the gap. Let's understand the plan that's going to close that gap. And then let's review. Let's review it today and then figure out when we're going to review the progress again at some point in the future. And that's CIGAR. Current Ideal Gap Actions Review. Super duper easy peasy. Now, if you think about it, before I populate it anymore, well, that's also a business plan. You could also say, well, that's also the model of a business plan, isn't it? We're here. We want to be here. This is the gap. These are all of the things that we're going to do to close that gap. Here's the action plan for that. And then when are we going to review it and fine tune it and all of that kind of stuff? I was doing a training session yesterday, some of our clients, about exactly that principle. And I said, look, we have to decide as leaders and as managers, what are the things that we're going to do? And I would much rather, I'm sure you would too, because this is an issue for a lot of business owners and leaders, I would much rather we did 4 or 5 things really well rather than 20 things and do them all poorly, do them all badly, right? So let's concentrate on the few most important things. So if we're going to make a plan, if we're going to fix something, then let's absolutely commit to doing it, right? Whether that's coaching or business development. And I likened it to a pilot, right? When I was learning to fly years and years and years ago, one of the instructors said to me a really interesting thing, which I'm going to share with you in a second. And I use it often now as a principle when I'm talking to, some of our clients, some of our customers. We're talking about coaching, we're talking about business plans. I said, look, there's never any shortage of things to coach your people on. There's never any shortage of things that you could do as an organization. The trick is deciding the few things that you're going to do and then committing to them and doing them. And it's a bit like when I was learning to fly. So my instructor said to me one day, he said, look, takeoff is optional, right? In other words, to use the analogy into our business, if we're going to do something, it's up to us whether we do it or not. And if we decide we're going to do it, then let's take off and let's do it. So now takeoff is optional. It's landing, however, once you've taken off, is compulsory, right? You don't have a choice. If you have a choice as to whether or not you take off. You then have no choice as whether or not you land, right? Takeoff is optional, but landing is compulsory. And I think that you've got to think about the same thing. We could coach our people on a million things. Let's figure out the few most important things that are going to make the biggest difference, whether it's business plans, departmental plans, coaching with people. Let's figure out the really, really important things. And I say this not to say, hey, listen, buy an assessment or two from us, because there's lots of people that do assessments and benchmark people. But it's really important to know the things that we're trying to address and then figure out how to do it. So maybe you want to have a look at our website, maybe take an assessment or two, so that we're having an objective look at what some of the issues are. Anyway, let's take a little break, sip some coffee and put your feet up. I want to tell you about something else, and then we're going to come back and finish off this model. So I hope that's okay. I hope you think you've earned yourself a coffee and a sticky bun. So whilst you're sipping your coffee and enjoying your sticky bun, I want to tell you about our book, Hold Fast. Here it is. It's quite a weighty tome. It's 400 odd pages. If you drop it on your foot, you probably need to go to the doctors. Don't let that put you off. It's rip-roaring, page-turning stuff. Also, you can get it on audio for those auditory learners. I went down to London myself and recorded it. So if you want to hear a little bit about me reading the words I wrote, look, this is, so it's My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success, and written by that chap there, which is me. Now, coaching is just one of the pieces of the leadership puzzle. We cover a lot about it in here. We cover the whole puzzle, of course, in here. Well, as much as can be done on 478 pages. So if you want to know a little bit more about coaching and some of the models that we use, have a look in here. You'll find this, I hope, incredibly valuable. I hope you'll find lots of explanations and examples and expertise on a whole host of leadership topics, including the big ones, right? EQ, emotional intelligence. We talked about that in our last segment. If you haven't seen that, please zip off and have a look at that. We talked about emotional intelligence, action bias, number one resource of leaders, self-awareness, talked about that last time, insight, blind spots, developing trust, self-limiting beliefs, all the good leadership hot topics, I suppose, and many, 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 many more. So if you know you need to start in your leadership development journey, but don't know quite how, a good way, well, obviously a good way is to start, in our opinion, by getting your hands on one of these. It's available wherever you get your books or audiobooks from. And please don't forget to share your thoughts and questions and comments and stuff that really kind of resonated with you, your aha moments about this episode and any other episode, in our comments. So do tell us what you think. I promise we have a look at it. I promise we pay attention to it. So why not? Why not have your say? Okay, that's the book. Let's get back to business. So what we've done so far is we've just sketched out at 30,000 feet our CIGAR model. Okay, so the current state, another way to say current state is, of course, context, right? So there's always some context, which is, here's where we are and here's why, okay? So it's important to know why it is where we are. And that, if you're having a coaching session with somebody, we don't have to go into that in enormous detail, but let's at least recognize that we're both on the same page with context and current state. When we're thinking then about the ideal state really is, we need to figure out really what's the short-term aim. So what's the short-term aim? I'm pretty sure you're already ahead of me. What's the medium-term aim? And then what's the longer-term aim? In other words, we're here now. We want to get to here. Well, we're going to eat that in elephant burgers, right? So where do we go first in the short term, and then where, and then where, and then let's break it down to the extent that we can. Because if we just say we're here now and we're trying to get here, oftentimes that feels so daunting and overwhelming that we're not entirely sure how to do it. And so we get analysis paralysis and we get so overwhelmed by the scale of the task. So let's just say, well, we're here now. We want to be here, but let's just start here. And it's a bit like flying again. Why? Because if you imagine you're the pilot of a commercial aircraft and you're taking off from JFK, in New York and you want to go to London Heathrow. You absolutely know as a pilot that you're going to take off, you're going to go on a bearing from New York to London, and you've registered your flight plan, but you know that you're going to have to course correct 1,000 times on the way from JFK to, and you're okay with that. You know that there's going to be some course correction. You don't know what the course correction is going to be, but you know it's there. And you're very relaxed about that. Well, we ought to get relaxed about that too, right? So we know that we're at JFK, we want to get to London Heathrow, and we know there are going to be lots of steps along the way. So that's okay. Let's not try and get from JFK to London Heathrow in 20 minutes, because it's going to take 10 hours, right? Okay. So, ideal state. Now, gaps. What does gaps mean? Well, gaps means that there's some barriers, right? Probably something broken, probably something missing, probably something that someone's confused about, right? So when you think gaps, think broken, missing, confused. Think about barriers. Think about what's missing. Let's understand the things that are in the way. So when we understand them, we can do something about them. Okay. Action plan. Well, the action plan is, well, how will we close that gap, right? In other words, what do we need to do more of? What do we need to do less of? What do we need to do differently? And what do we need to do better? And again, in a coaching conversation, that's a really easy question. What things do you think we need to do more of, Frank? What things do you think we need to do less of, Frank? Let's discuss that. What things do you think we need to do differently, Frank? What things do you think we need to do better, Frank? And here's the thing. We don't go into a coaching call. Okay, back up the truck just for a second. The number one golfer in the world right now is Rory McIlroy at the time of going into recording. His coach, I think, is a chap called Michael Gallagher. I'm pretty sure of that. Now, let's think about this for a second. If Rory McIlroy, number one golfer in the world, were to play golf against the guy that helps him get even better, Michael Gallagher, in other words, the number one golfer in the world, has a guy, his coach, that helps him improve, Michael Gallagher, I'm pretty sure. If Rory McIlroy were to play golf against Michael Gallagher, who would win? If Rory McIlroy were to play golf against Michael Gallagher, remember, Michael Gallagher is the guy that makes Rory McIlroy better at golf because he's his coach. If Rory McIlroy were to play golf against Michael Gallagher, who would win? Well, Rory McIlroy would. He would wipe the floor with Michael Gallagher. Why? Because he's the number one golfer in the world. So let's just unpick that for a second. The number one golfer in the world has somebody that makes him better at the golf that isn't even as good as golf as he is, right? My football team, Manchester City, the head coach there is a guy called Pep Guardiola. Does Pep Guardiola kick a ball, run with a ball, pass a ball, defend, attack, shoot better than all of his players? Is Pep Guardiola the best player? No, he's nowhere near as good as the people that he coaches. The people that he coaches are significantly better than they are at doing the thing that they do. And yet, Pep Guardiola coaches them every day to get better. Neither do you ever see an important game, a super important game. I hope you're drawing these analogies to your world, right? Never do you see Pep Guardiola in a really important cup match game. Maybe it's the final. Maybe there's 10 minutes to go. Maybe there's a free kick to be taken. Do you ever see Pep Guardiola go, okay, time out, everybody, and start putting his boots on and say, let me show you how this is done, and goes out onto the pitch and takes the free kick? Never, ever will you see ever such a thing. Because why? Because all of his players are better at kicking the ball than he is. And yet he's the guy that every day makes them better at kicking the ball. It's weird, right, if you think about it. But once you figure that out, okay, yeah, the person that helps me get better doesn't necessarily have to be a better accountant, technician, code writer, sales guy, manager than the person that's helping make them better. In fact, rarely is that ever the case. All they do is coach really, really, really well. They're a good coach. You don't have to know everything about the things that you're coaching for. I bet I could coach the Australian women's curling team, Olympic team, if they had one. I don't even know if they have one. What do I know about curling? You could write it on the back of a stamp. Have I ever coached Australian women Olympic teams? No, but if you're a good coach, you can help anybody, right? Just like your mum did, right? Helped you learn to walk and talk and read and write and drive a car and whatever else. She helped you with a million things because what she was very interested in seeing you grow and develop. Okay, good. So one of the obstacles that lots of people have is, well, I need to be the best at this thing. No, you don't. You just need to have a mentality that says, let's work it out together. So when Rory McIlroy has just played a game of golf, maybe lost a tournament or won a tournament, and the next day is spending some time with Michael Gallagher, and they have a conversation and say maybe he needs a little bit of help getting out of the bunkers, Michael Gallagher doesn't say, well, do this and then do this and then do this, and you need to keep your head still and drop your left hip and your hands are too high. None of that. So let's figure it out together. And they try a few things. So was that better or worse? Try a few other things. Was that better or worse? And they figure it out together. So the action plan is never going to be perfect. We're going to have to course correct a million times because no plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. That great philosopher Mike Tyson said it's amazing how easily or quickly a plan goes out the window when you get punched in the face. So the review is the critical thing. What a lot of mistakes that people do is they have a coaching session with someone. They think, well, that's fixed. That, off you go. And then they never talk about it again. The review is critical. There's two reviews. The first review is the summarize. Then they have to summarize. That's really important. How many times have you as a boss said to somebody, okay, so that's what we're going to do. That's the plan. That's the idea. Is everybody cool? Are we all on the same page? Is everybody happy? And everybody says, yes, boss, we're fine. We're great. Makes perfect sense. And then you think, terrific. I'm such a great boss. And now we're all on the same page. However, they then go and do something completely different and bizarre. So instead of just saying, are we all on the same page? Why don't we start saying to our people after we've had a conversation, okay, George, in your own words, tell me what we've just agreed. And you'll be staggered at how often, certainly at first, that there's a disconnect between what you think you just talked about, what they think they've just talked about. So there's a review at the end of every coaching session that has to start with them to make sure that you're all on the same page. So the summary has to be them. And then we have to make sure that we have all of the actions that we need. We need to figure out how the KPIs, and figure out how we measure it, what the results are going to look like, good or bad, right? What the remeasurements are. When we're going to review it, all of that good plan hygiene stuff, even with a coaching session. So let's just quickly review. Where are we now? Where do we want to be in the short term, medium, and long term? Let's understand that gap. Once we understand the gap, we can figure out actions to fix those things, actions to fix those things, actions to fix those things. Now we have a plan. Then let's review that plan. Let's get everybody to make sure that we're all on the same page. So have them review first, right? Agree the KPIs, that's the key performance indicators. Agree what good looks like, agree what bad looks like. Management by exception, topic for another day. Review triggers and course correction and all of that good stuff. And then that's it. Then let them get on with it. We talked last time about people don't want to be micromanaged, right? They want a sense of autonomy. This is how we do it. We agree a plan, agree what it looks like, what good looks like, bad looks like, what the review triggers look like, and then let them get on with it. And this works for coaching and it works for business development and everything. Okay, good. A million things to talk about, a million miles an hour. But I'll just say this for now because we've been going for a while. Thanks once again for tuning in to Stop Managing and Start Leading, and My Daily Leadership podcast. Look, whatever your reason for listening or watching today, I do appreciate you popping along, and I do hope that there was something in this episode that offered you something of value, even if it was just one little tip, one little comment, but anything that improves your leadership ability, even if it's only by 1%. Remember, there's tremendous power in marginal gains over time. Compound interest, terrific. Now, there's also power in community. You guys are so great. So please do share your questions, insights, topic suggestions. Delighted to do a program on any topic, right? Any leadership topic or coaching, development topic that you like. If you're watching on YouTube, whilst you're down there, give the video a like and subscribe too. And for our auditory learners, our ALs, you're only getting half the story as ever, I'm afraid. So please do head on over to YouTube, where today's episode, today's model comes to life with notes and models and drawings and all of that kind of stuff. The answer to the question, by the way, how do I coach? Well, it's all there, right? Start by using the CIGAR model. Can you get more sophisticated? Of course, but let's start here. All models are available to download at www.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. In the next episode, next time, it's a goodie. We're going to teach you how to put a plan on our page. What? Yeah, you heard me. A whole plan, the whole business, put a plan on a page. If you can't put it on a page, Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 12-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. So if your business plan looks like the New York Yellow Pages, and yes, I know that ages me, and there probably is no such thing anymore, but I hope you know what that means. If your business plan looks like the New York Yellow Pages, you really got to fix it. I'm Antonio Garrido with My Daily Leadership. Thanks for being here. Until next time, as ever, by wisdom and efforts, thanks for stopping on by. See you next time.